It started with one envelope, small, creased, and sealed with the kind of truth no one wanted to open. As Meri slid it across the courtroom table, Kody's face turned the color of ash, and Robyn's hand went limp around her wedding ring. Inside that envelope was a DNA report, one that could shatter everything the sister wives ever claimed was sacred. "If this is real," the judge whispered, scanning the papers, "then someone in this room has been living a lie." And in that moment, the courtroom was silent. Meri sat still, her hands trembling slightly, but her gaze didn't move. Not from Kody, not from the man who'd once promised her forever, and then gave her years of excuses instead. Robyn sat 2 seats away, her lips pressed tight, mascara already trembling on her lashes. She looked less like a wife, and more like someone cornered by her own reflection. The air felt thick, as if you could taste every unsaid word and every secret that had built up over decades of family smiles and public lies. Kody finally broke the silence, his voice low, almost cracking. "Meri, what is this? What are you trying to do?" Her response was calm. "I'm not trying to do anything, Kody. I'm just showing the truth you hid from everybody." The judge, an older woman named Judge Peterson, looked from one side of the room to the other, her eyes sharp and weary. She had seen everything, but even she wasn't ready for the kind of family chaos that was about to unfold. Behind Meri sat Christine and Janelle. Their eyes met, and Christine gave a small nod, the kind of nod that says, "We've waited long enough." They weren't here for revenge. They came here for closure. But Robyn? She wasn't ready for any of it. She leaned into Kody, whispering frantically, "You told me this was handled. You said it didn't exist anymore." Kody's jaw was clenched. "It wasn't supposed to. I burned the original." Judge Peterson raised an eyebrow. "You burned evidence, Mr. Brown?" The courtroom gasped, soft, but sharp enough to sting. The media had flooded in since morning. Sister Wives fans, reporters, bloggers, all hungry for one thing. The truth behind the most famous plural family in America. Meri's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, this DNA report shows a match, or rather, a lack of one. It proves that a child long claimed to be biologically Kody's isn't." Robyn's eyes darted to the papers, then to Kody, then to the courtroom door, as if looking for an escape that didn't exist. Kody's voice cracked. "You're lying. You're twisting this." But his words didn't have the fire they used to. There was fear behind them now. Real fear. Meri's voice was shaking. Her words were steady. "I kept quiet when you made me feel small. When you chose her over me. But not about this. Not anymore." Christine looked down, biting her lip. It was the first time she'd seen Meri stand taller than Kody in years. Janelle's eyes watered. "This isn't just about betrayal," she whispered under her breath. "This is about identity." The judge finally returned her attention to Meri's lawyer. "Continue." He nodded. "Your Honor, this test shows the child in question, born in 2011, does not have a biological relation to Kody Brown, despite public claims, family records, and financial dependency statements filed in his name." Those words hit harder than anyone expected. Robyn let out a sob, raw and heavy, the kind that filled the quiet with shame. Kody slumped back in his chair, pale, his fingers white-knuckled as he clung to the table's edge like a drowning man clutching at driftwood. Outside the courtroom, fans were live-streaming updates. "Meri's finally doing it," one woman whispered into her phone camera. "After all these years, she's bringing the truth to light." Inside, Kody's attorney tried to wrest back control. "Your Honor, my client moves that this evidence be stricken. The chain of custody is murky, and the purported DNA report was never authenticated by any court agreed upon methodology. But Mary's lawyer was ready. We have the original lab confirmation, signed by Dr. L. Crowley of Phoenix Medical Diagnostics. Verified, time-stamped, and filed before it was destroyed by Mr. Brown. The gavel of the judge fell upon the desk, and once more all was silent. Mr. Brown, this court will not tolerate the destruction of evidence. Do you understand the seriousness of this claim? Kody swallowed hard. Yes, Your Honor. Then, almost as if the weight were too much to bear, Robyn whispered, "He didn't act alone." All heads turned towards her. Meri froze. Even she did not expect that. The judge leaned forward. "Mrs. Brown, are you saying that someone helped destroy evidence?" Robyn held back, her lips trembling. I can't say." Kody's glare could have burned through stone. But Mary's whisper cut through the silence. "Then say it, Robyn. Say who helped you hide the truth." Robyn's eyes darted toward the back of the courtroom, to a man sitting alone, wearing dark glasses and holding a briefcase. The camera zoomed in on him. The audience murmured. Nobody knew who he was, until Christine's eyes widened. "Kody's brother," she whispered. "It's Nathan." The room erupted again, reporters scribbling, flashes lighting the courtroom like lightning strikes. Judge Peterson's gavel slammed again. "Order. I will have order in my court." Robyn buried her face in her hands. "He told me it was for the best, that the truth would destroy us all." Mary's voice shook, but she did not back down. "It already did, Robyn. You just didn't notice when it happened." The judge called for recess, and as everyone stood up, Kody leaned in toward Meri, his whisper cold and bitter. "You think you've won something here? You haven't seen what I have planned next." Meri didn't even look at him. She got to her feet, smoothing her papers, and telling him quietly, "I'm not fighting for revenge, Kody. I'm fighting for peace." The gavel came down one last time and the crowd spilled into the hall as one camera captured Meri walking right past Robyn without a glance. But the smallest, sharpest moment came when Robyn reached out, fingers shaking, and whispered, "Please don't do this." Meri paused. The room was silent again for a moment. Then she said quietly, "I already did." And with that, she walked out, leaving behind the silence heavy enough to echo. The hall outside the courtroom was buzzing like a hive. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, and Meri walked through it all, with an expression like someone who just stepped out of a storm and realized the sky was finally clear. Inside, Kody paced back and forth, his jaw tight, whispering with his lawyer. Robyn sat alone at the table, a tissue crushed in her hand. The recess was short, but it felt like a lifetime. When the judge returned, the bailiff called the court to order again. "Next witness," Judge Peterson announced, "Mrs. Robyn Brown." Robyn hesitated, then stood. Her heels clicked softly against the wooden floor. Her eyes darted to Kody, seeking solace, but his gaze was fixed somewhere far away, maybe on the life he'd just watched crumble. With a trembling voice, she took her oath and sat down. The microphone in front of her caught the sound of a deep breath, a small sniffle, and then silence. Mary's attorney stepped forward. "Mrs. Brown, we understand that you knew of the DNA results long before this court ever saw them. Is that correct?" Robyn swallowed. "I knew something was wrong, yes." "You knew," he pressed, "but chose not to disclose it?" Her eyes filled again. "Kody said it would destroy the family. I believed him." A murmur went through the crowd. Meri watched quietly, her hands folded, face unreadable. The lawyer stepped closer. "Mrs. Brown, are you saying your husband instructed you to hide the results?" Robyn's lips quivered. He told me to forget it ever existed. And the destruction of the original report. Did you participate in that? Tears slipped down her face. I gave it to Nathan. I didn't know he'd burn it. The courtroom gasped again. Judge Peterson leaned forward. So the destruction was intentional. Robyn nodded slowly. Yes, Your Honor. Kody didn't want Meri to have proof. He said the truth would ruin the brand. The phrase hit like thunder. Even the clerk in the courtroom stopped typing for a second. Kody shifted uncomfortably. His lawyer whispered something to him, but he didn't answer. The voice of the judge was sharp. Mr. Brown, do you confirm or deny this statement? Kody straightened. I deny it, completely. Meri's attorney smiled wryly. And why does your brother's phone record show 3 late-night calls between you two? The same evening, the report was destroyed. The defense table was paralyzed. Robyn's sobs grew louder. I told him not to. I begged him to let it go. But he said if the world found out, people would never look at him the same again. Her voice cracked. He said Meri wouldn't survive the humiliation. Meri blinked slowly, her composure barely holding. For one swift second, a flicker of sadness crossed her face. Not victory, not anger, but a quiet ache for what once was. Judge Peterson pounded his gavel once more. We will hear no more outbursts. Continue. Meri's lawyer nodded. Mrs. Brown, can you tell the court whose child the DNA report refers to? Robyn looked down at her shaking hands. It's mine, but not Kody's. The words hung heavy in the air. There were gasps throughout the room. Like ripples in water. Kody's face went white. Robyn, stop. But she couldn't. The dam had broken. She stared directly at the judge. He's not the father, and he's known it since well before the wedding. The audience erupted. Cameras flashed like lightning. Kody slammed his hand on the table. That's not true. Judge Peterson nodded to the bailiff. Remove all non-essential personnel, if necessary. We will have order. Meri sat frozen, half relief, half heartbreak. Christine leaned towards Janelle. You don't believe her? I think she's finally telling the truth, Janelle whispered. Kody's attorney requested permission to cross-examine. Mrs. Brown, he said coolly, you're admitting to perjury and withholding evidence. Are you hoping your cooperation today will reduce your potential sentence? Robyn shook her head. I'm hoping it will give my children a future. So this is about your children. She nodded. Always was. Her voice steadied. Kody made choices to protect his image, not his family. Every time I followed, a piece of me disappeared. The courtroom fell into a deep, aching silence. Even the reporters stopped typing. The cross-examination was over. Judge Peterson called for a short recess. Meri passed the witness stand. Robyn reached out again, her voice cracking. I'm sorry. Meri paused, looking at her, then said in a quiet tone, I know. But sorry doesn't rebuild what you burned. She walked out into the corridor, where cameras were waiting. Someone shouted, Meri, do you forgive them? She didn't answer. She just kept walking, the heels echoing against marble, a heartbeat trying to find rhythm again. Back inside, Kody sank into his chair. His lawyer whispered, we can still control the narrative if you don't lose your temper. But the anger was already visible. His jaw pulsed, his fists clenched. He looked over towards the judge's bench, then towards the jury box, then at Robyn. You think you've saved yourself? He muttered. You just destroyed us all. Robyn wiped her face. Maybe we needed destroying. Judge Peterson returned to her seat. This court will reconvene tomorrow at 9 a.m. We will review the physical evidence and hear testimony from Mr. Nathan Brown. Her gavel struck one sharp note that echoed through the hall. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. Reporters whispered that the storm felt symbolic, as if the weather itself was reacting to what had just unfolded. Meri looked from a tall window toward the gray sky. Her reflection looked older, stronger. Christine approached. "You did what no one else could." Meri sighed. "It's not over yet." Because she knew the hardest part wasn't the proof. It was the aftermath. And tomorrow, when Nathan Brown took the stand, the truth would go deeper than DNA. It would reach to the roots of everything they'd built: faith, loyalty, love, and lies. And next morning, the courthouse seemed different. The crowd had doubled outside overnight. Reporters stood under gray skies, holding umbrellas, their voices mingling with the patter of rain. Inside, cameras were ready. The air buzzed with that electric quiet before something historic happens. Meri arrived first, calm, almost serene. She wore a dark suit, hair tied neatly back. Christine and Janelle followed behind, exchanging quiet words. Robyn was nowhere to be seen. Kody entered last, flanked by his lawyer, his face unreadable, but his eyes darting from camera to camera. When the bailiff called the court to order, Judge Peterson looked more tired than usual, as if even she hadn't slept well. "Call your next witness," she said. Meri's attorney stood. "The prosecution calls Mr. Nathan Brown." Nathan walked in slowly, tall, composed, but the weight he carried showed in his shoulders. Kody's jaw clamped down in an instant. Their eyes met. Two brothers divided by secrets that went way beyond family. Nathan took the stand, raised his hand, and swore the oath. He didn't look at Kody again. "Mr. Brown," Meri's attorney said, "can you tell the court what your involvement was in the destruction of the DNA report?" Nathan exhaled. "Kody called me, said he needed a favor, something urgent, something private." "And what was that favor?" "To retrieve a report from Robyn's house and make sure it never saw daylight again." A ripple of gasps echoed across the courtroom. "Did he tell you what was in the report?" Nathan hesitated. "He said it was about a paternity test. I didn't know who it involved until I saw the name." "And whose name did you see?" Nathan looked down. "Kody's, and a child that wasn't his." Kody's attorney objected, and the judge overruled. "Continue," she said. Nathan's voice was more even now. "He told me it would ruin him, that the family reputation and the show, everything they'd built, would fall apart. He said people would stop believing in them." The attorney asked, "And you agreed to help him?" Nathan nodded, ashamed. "I did. I burned the file in my backyard fire pit that night." He paused and glanced toward Kody. "But I made a copy before I did." The courtroom gasped. Even the judge froze mid-note. "You made a copy?" Nathan nodded again. "I couldn't destroy it completely. Something told me this day would come." Kody shot up from his chair. "You're lying, Nathan. You're just bitter because I cut you out of the show." Nathan's voice hardened. "You cut me out because I refuse to lie anymore." Judge Peterson rapped the gavel down. "Mr. Brown, sit down or I'll hold you in contempt." Kody fell back into his chair, muttering under his breath. Nathan reached into a folder. "Your Honor, I have a flash drive with a scanned copy of the original report. This has also been provided to the prosecution and the court for verification." The judge nodded to the bailiff, who collected it carefully. "Court will recess for 15 minutes while this evidence is reviewed." The room erupted with whispers. Meri sat still, but her eyes glistened, not from joy, but from a strange mixture of relief and sadness. Christine leaned in. "He kept a copy all this time. Maybe someone in that family still had a conscience," Meri whispered. When the judge came back, her expression said it all before her words did. This court has reviewed the digital document. The report appears authentic and matches the metadata timestamp from the original lab. Kody's attorney slumped a little. Meri's lawyer rose. Your Honor, this confirms not only the existence, but also the deliberate destruction of verified evidence. The judge looked directly at Kody. Mr. Brown, do you have anything to say before we proceed? Kody stood slowly. He adjusted his tie, looked at Robyn, who had slipped quietly into the courtroom mid-session, and spoke in a low, trembling voice. I did what I thought was right for my family. You think this is about lies, but it's about protection. You can't understand what it's like to live under cameras, to have your faith questioned every day. He looked at Meri. You left, Christine left, Janelle left, and every one of you took a piece of me when you did. Meri's eyes softened, yet she said nothing. Kody continued. So yes, I hid it, because the world didn't need one more reason to call us broken. No one spoke for a moment. Not even the judge said anything. Torn between justice and pity. The silence was broken by Nathan. You didn't hide it for the family, Kody. You hid it for yourself. Robyn sobbed softly, hand over her mouth. Christine whispered, He's right. Meri looked down, tears finally slipping free. Judge Peterson cleared her throat. This court recognizes the fact that DNA evidence has been verified. Further testimony will decide whether Mr. Brown's acts were obstruction of justice and perjury. Her gavel struck once firm, final, echoing like a heartbeat in the quiet room. As court adjourned for the day, the flashing lights and restless voices crowded the hallway once more. Reporters called out questions. Meri, do you feel vindicated? Kody, is this the end of the sister wives' legacy? But the most haunting moment wasn't from the cameras. It was when Nathan walked past Kody without a word. Kody turned and said, You betrayed your own blood, almost in a whisper. Nathan stopped, turned back and said, I saved it. That night, the headlines blazed across every network. DNA bombshell, Kody Brown exposed in court. Robyn confirms secret child not Kody's. Meri's evidence changes everything. Meri sat alone in her hotel room, watching the coverage with the sound turned low. Her phone whirred, a message from Christine. Tomorrow's your turn on the stand. Be ready. Meri typed back, I've been ready for years. She turned off the TV, sat in silence, and whispered, Let the truth finish what it started. Meri woke before dawn, the day of her testimony. The silence in the hotel room was nearly total, broken only by the soft hum of the air conditioner and the light patter of drizzle outside. She sat at the small desk, staring at the Bible she hadn't opened in years. The reflection in the mirror didn't look angry anymore, just tired and ready. By the time she reached the courthouse, reporters were already camped out in the rain, shouting questions that melted into each other. You think Kody is going to confess? Is the family finished? She didn't say anything. She merely raised her chin a little, the way one does when one has finally stopped running from the truth. Inside, the courtroom lights glowed harsh and cold. Kody was there already, his face stone still. Robyn sat beside him, her eyes red but dry. Nathan gave Meri a small nod from the witness section, a silent promise that she wasn't alone. Judge Peterson adjusted her glasses. Mrs. Meri Brown, please take the stand. She slowly walked to the witness chair, her every step echoing through the room. As she sat down, she exhaled, almost smiling. Meri's attorney started off softly. Mrs. Brown, you've heard the testimonies. Why bring this case forward now, after all these years? Meri looked down, fingers clasped together. Because silence became heavier than the truth. I lived in that silence for too long. He nodded. What was your relationship with Mr. Brown when the DNA test was first taken? Her laugh was small, almost bitter. We weren't partners anymore. We were headlines. He told the world we were family, but at home, I was a stranger. The audience leaned in. And when you found the report? I didn't find it. It found me. A message from an anonymous sender. Later I learned it was Nathan. When I saw those results, I felt everything at once: shock, sadness, then relief. Relief that my instincts weren't crazy. The lawyer paced slowly. What did you do after seeing it? I asked Kody. He denied it so convincingly that I almost believed him again. She paused, eyes welling. That's what manipulation feels like. It makes you doubt your own eyes. Kody stirred uneasily as she spoke, across the room. Meri continued. For years, I let him define what was real. He said family was sacred, but only when it served him. He preached honesty, while burying the truth in his backyard. The judge raised an eyebrow, but let her continue. Her lawyer asked quietly, "What did it cost you to stay quiet?" Her voice fell. Everything. My friends, my peace, my faith in myself. I thought forgiving him meant forgetting what he'd done. She took a deep breath. It doesn't. Forgiveness isn't silence. It's letting go of the hope that he'll ever make it right. The courtroom was utterly silent. Even the reporter seemed to forget to type. Then the defense stood. Kody's attorney was composed but incisive as she asked, "Mrs. Brown, this is about justice, you said. Isn't this really about revenge?" Meri looked at him, unflinching. If it were revenge, I'd want him to hurt. I don't. I just want the truth on record. The lawyer smirked. Yet you went public. You brought cameras into this. That's not justice. That's spectacle. She leaned forward. The cameras were always there. He invited them. He built an empire on pretending we were happy. I'm just refusing to keep acting. Kody suddenly stood. You're twisting everything, he shouted. Judge Peterson banged his gavel. Mr. Brown, sit down. He did, but not before muttering, You loved the attention as much as I did. Meri turned on him, eyes blazing. No, Kody, I loved you, and that was my mistake. The silence that followed was the kind where everyone held their breath. Robyn began to cry softly, whispering, Please stop. Judge Peterson spoke in a soft, almost gentle tone. Mrs. Brown, one final question. What do you hope this court decides today? Meri's voice steadied. I hope it shows that the truth is stronger than image, that you can't hide behind faith or fame forever. And I hope someday my son and every woman who watched me stay quiet learns that love isn't supposed to cost your self-respect. The judge nodded slowly. Thank you, Mrs. Brown. You may step down. As Meri stood up, applause erupted from the gallery, despite the warnings by the judge. Christine wiped her eyes. Janelle mouthed the words, proud of you. Outside the courthouse, thunder rolled again. Reporters surrounded Meri, microphones outstretched. Do you think Kody will be charged? Will you reconcile? Meri stopped, turned to the cameras and said quietly, I don't need him to lose for me to win. I just needed the truth to live somewhere other than my heart. Back inside, Kody sat alone. Robyn reached for his hand, but he didn't move. His whisper barely escaped his lips. They'll forget. People always forget. Robyn looked at him with sadness. Not this time. Later that evening, Judge Peterson met privately with both legal teams. The DNA report had proven false representation. There would be financial penalties, perhaps even charges for evidence destruction. But the judge admitted something unusual. This case isn't just about law, she said quietly. It's about healing something that was never legal to begin with, a broken family. Nathan walked Meri out to her car. You did good, he said. Meri smiled faintly. We all did, in our own way. He nodded. Tomorrow, the verdict. She looked up at the dark clouds. A soft drizzle started again. Feels like it's already been written. She drove off into the rain, headlights cutting through the gray. In the rearview mirror, the courthouse grew smaller, but her reflection looked lighter. For the first time in years, Meri Brown wasn't part of a plural marriage, a TV brand, or a scandal. She was herself. And tomorrow, when the judge read the final decision, the whole world would find out if the truth she fought for would set her free, or would tear what remained completely apart. The final day of the trial dawned with a strange quiet, the kind that comes before something breaks or something begins. The rain had stopped, but the streets were slick and shining. The courthouse stood tall, the morning sun flickering across its windows like it too was holding its breath. Inside, every seat in the crowded courtroom was filled. Fans, reporters, former friends, and some strangers who had followed the sister wives for years. All waited for the end of a story they never thought would reach a courtroom. First into the room came Kody Brown, swallowed up in a dark suit. Gone was the old swagger. Now his shoulders hunched and his eyes, while defiant, were sunken. She walked quietly behind him, her mascara already smudged, as if she knew how this day would end. Meri was the last to arrive, neither in haste nor nervous. She had on an air of calm, not arrogance, but acceptance. Sitting in the back row of chairs, Christine and Janelle sat together, holding hands in a manner that spoke volumes beyond any words. Judge Peterson entered, and the gavel struck once. The room snapped into stillness. The clerk read the case number, the legal language sounding distant, almost unreal. Then the judge lifted her gaze toward the room. I have read the testimonies, the DNA evidence, as well as the statements of all parties involved, she said. This case has revealed far more than scientific facts. It's exposed the cost of deception in the name of faith, fame, and family. Kody's lawyer stirred and said something under his breath, but Kody didn't react. He just stared ahead. Judge Peterson explained, the DNA test, which Mr. Brown knowingly concealed and misrepresented, confirms fraudulent conduct relating to the paternity claims and misuse of family finances in relation to public image. A gasp rippled through the room. Cameras clicked. Robyn's hand flew to her mouth. Kody blinked hard, as if the words hadn't yet reached him. The court, the judge continued, therefore finds Kody Brown guilty of fraud and perjury in connection with family and business declarations made under oath. Restitution is ordered, as well as a public correction of record. The gavel fell once again. Furthermore, this court recognizes the emotional and reputational harm to the plaintiffs, Meri Brown, Christine Brown, and Janelle Brown, and grants them restitution and sole media rights regarding the family narrative moving forward. Kody stood slowly. You can't take my story from me, he muttered. Meri turned, her voice steady. It was never your story, Kody. It was ours, and we're finally taking it back. He glared at her, but his eyes flickered with something no one had seen in him before. Fear. Robyn started to cry openly now, her body trembling. She was whispering to Kody that they could fix this. He shook his head. No, you can't fix the truth. When lies collapse, they don't explode. They crumble, quietly, under the weight of their own silence. Reporters rushed outside, shouting into microphones. Breaking news. Kody Brown found guilty of fraud and perjury. Historic end to these sister wives' legacy. Inside, Meri remained seated long after everyone else rose. She didn't smile, didn't gloat. She just looked at her hands. Steady, clean, and finally free. Christine came to her. "You did it, Mare." Meri looked up, a soft smile forming. "No, we did." Janelle added, "It's over." Meri shook her head gently. "No. It's just finally honest." They walked out together, three women who had once shared a husband, now sharing a truth. The sun set blood orange across Flagstaff that evening. The courthouse steps were bare now, but reverberations of the day remained. One reporter remained behind to broadcast the final segment live. After years of speculation and silence, the truth about the sister wives' family has been laid out in court today. But perhaps the most remarkable thing is not the verdict, but the courage of the women who would not be erased. Across town, Meri sat on her porch, the wind lifting strands of her hair as she scrolled through her phone. Messages from supporters, old friends, even strangers thanking her for speaking up. She put down the phone, looked out at the desert horizon, and whispered, "This is what freedom sounds like." In the distance, the thunder rolled again. No storm, only a reminder. Somewhere between love and loyalty, there's a line people cross when they think truth can stay buried forever. But truth doesn't rot in the dark. It waits, quietly, patiently, for the day someone brave enough drags it back into the light. Meri Brown didn't just win a case. She ended a cycle. And maybe that's what justice really is. Not punishment, but peace. Headlines flooded the internet that night. But one went viral. A photo of Meri walking out of the courthouse. Rain in her hair, no umbrella, no entourage, just a woman who finally stopped apologizing for surviving. Meanwhile, Kody sat in his empty living room. The lights were off, the cameras gone. The house that was once full of voices now echoed with absence. He picked up a framed photo, him, Robyn, the kids, and turned it face down. In the silence, he whispered, "They'll forget." But the world had moved on, because sometimes the ending you fear most isn't being hated. It's being forgotten. And as the gavel fell, for the last time, the sister wives saga closed one chapter, but opened another. Not one built on cameras, contracts, or control, but on truth, the kind that doesn't need a show to survive.